Join us on the Trout Show as we sit down with Gordy Knudtson, the legendary drummer who laid down the groove for the Steve Miller Band for over 3 decades. From rocking arenas with timeless hits like Fly Like an Eagle and The Joker to pioneering the innovative open and closed drumming technique, Gordy's career is a masterclass in rhythm and resilience. Beyond the stage, he's an educator, author, and the visionary behind GK Music's groundbreaking hearing protection headphones for musicians. Get ready for an exclusive dive into his musical journey, creative process, and life behind the kit. Now here's the Trout with Gordy.
Let me ask, here's my friend. He's an amateur drummer.
Okay.
He's a banker by trade, okay? But he plays in a band in Chattanooga. So I asked him, I said, I was interviewing you, and I said, got any questions? Normally, I never ask people that. So here's what he says. What is his favorite wood type for drum kit?
Wow, okay. Not wood. Fiber. Well, it depends on the gig.
Okay,
For pop music and for Steve's gig, fiberglass.
really?
Yeah, and here's why. I did a test back in when I started working with Steve back in the late 80s and was making some money, and I was doing a fair amount of studio work too. I'd always done a fair amount of studio work here in Minneapolis. And a couple engineers, we started talking about what would be the best, the best recording kit we could build or make. So I had my brother happened to be a machinist, and about at this point, the Noble Cooley thing came along, and these people have been in business since, I believe, like the 1700s or the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
Making wood products, and they might be made a few drums, but it was a good, fairly large manufacturing thing. And they started building one-piece maple shells, and they had this lug that had a one note at the bottom where it was attached to the shell and nothing else. And they had some logic behind it. Well, that's the nodal pointer that whatever, sales crap or whatever. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, this is an idea. What if my brother's a machinist? So I said, would you build me some lugs if we built some tom-toms using the same principle? This is before they were built. Noble Cooley was building kits.
Oh, wow.
So I ordered shells from 3 different companies that would sell you shells. Keller, who was selling to DW at that point in time, Jasper, who sold to Gretsch, and then there was this custom outfit out of Saugus, Massachusetts called Eames. And then I had my current Yamaha set. So we built the things up. I had basically all the drums are the same sizes. They basically all had the same lugs, other than my Yamaha was a stock kit. And about the time we got this finished, I had all the bearing edges done, all right, all the technical shit. So everything is like, try as level playing field as possible. About this time, an engineer I'd been working with in Des Moines, Iowa, had moved up here and become the chief engineer at Paisley Park. And I called him and I said, hey, Tom, I've got these drums. Can we do some testing one day? He said, oh man, that'd be great. So I got to go out to Paisley Park. We had 4 of these wooden kits put up, and we went into Studio B. We listened to everything. They pretty much sounded the same. The Eames stuff sounded maybe 5-10% better, just a little.
Yeah.
They cost 5 times as much as everything else, but it was only about 10% better. And I said, okay, interesting. And then I had also was aware of these fiberglass drums called Tempest. They used to be called Milestone, but then they were bought by someone else and changed the name to Tempest. And they were unusual in that they were very thin fiberglass shells. So I had ordered a set from that company as well, same sizes.
Right.
So after we did the test with the wood shell, the next day we were back in Studio A. We had the winner of the wood day, and then the guy with the fiberglass shells happened to be going through town on his way to Germany for the big
show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, it's like a NAM over there. Yeah.
exactly. So he came in and we put the drums together. We listened to the in Studio A. We listened to the wood shell stuff. Sounded good. We put the fiberglass stuff up, and it was like, oh my God! It was like these three-dimensional things coming through the speaker. I mean,
Oh wow.
it was dramatic. So for pop music, if you need the hammer of God tom tom sound, fiberglass is definitely the way to go. And I thought this is really cool. I also
Right.
play other gigs too. I do some jazz music and that kind of stuff, straight ahead stuff. Um, and I thought, wow, let's build a jazz kit out of it. So I did that and I put it all together and I took it out in a gig and oh my God, it was awful. It was just like the most wrong thing you could do. It was just, you know. So for the bebop stuff, I love the old wood shell drums. I've got an old set of probably 1960s Ludwig, a downbeat set with a 12 by 18 bass drum and a 12 and 14 tom and a little wood snare. And it sounds perfect with acoustic piano, upright bass.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's the deal.
Jazz stuff. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Because
So
it's not going to be boomy. It's going to be real tight, I imagine.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you tell your friend if he wants to get the Hammer of God tom tom sound, man, I'm telling you, the fiberglass is the way to go. I still prefer metal snare drums, and the fiberglass kick works well too. So
So the other question, yeah, two other questions real quick. What kind of mics do you use? And I'm sure that probably changes too, depending on where you are.
yeah, that's in the studio. It's kind of leave that up to the engineer.
Yeah.
When we were out with Steve, um, we had several different things sometimes, and I found I finally moved to the kind where it's an internal mic, which is not my favorite thing, but it
Mm,
was what we did live for about the last maybe 15, 20 years. We had as an AKG D112
mm.
mounted inside of each tom tom.
Oh wow.
It the thing I loved about it from the user standpoint was at sound check you don't have a lot of time sometimes to adjust stuff, and when
Right. Yeah.
when it's set up and you got to move the drum and then you got to move the mic and oh I got to do that and this, and it becomes this big puzzle. With the mic and the drum, I just put the drum where it needs to be, and
Oh, that's
that
cool. Yeah, I can see that working. Yeah.
the drag is it puts a little more of a metallic edge on the sound. So
Hmm.
the live stuff is kind of different sounding than it does in the studio, because in the studio I'm only doing outside mic, top miking.
Right.
But
And you're in a room.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the upside of the live thing with this kind of edgy metallic sound is it really cuts through the mix on when you have all those guitars jangling and all that stuff going on.
Hmm.
These edgier tom toms things really cut through the mix. The front of house guy loved them, and he was happy using them. So I said, great, man. And then I was happy because of it worked for setting up and that kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll ask you this question because this is where we're really going to start here. But I mean, reading your bio and you started at an early age. Who was the one when you were growing up that you said, "Oh, that's my best drummer. I want to. That's the person that influences me."
Well, there was a kind of a lot of guys. So first, I started in playing piano in grade school.
Oh wow.
My family was not a musical family. My father was tone deaf, basically. My mother had a modicum of musical talent, and she kind of could play a little bit of keyboard. So she got me some lessons, some piano lessons, and all the times the teachers would be pulling my mom aside, like at the end of the, hey, your son's got some good ears. So I did well, and I played up till like I was 13. I won a state contest for my age.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I didn't care for it because I wanted to play what I thought was jazz or boogie woogie or blues, that kind of stuff, and they wanted me to do all this classical stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I was kind of turned off by that, but I made up some little blues tunes of my own on the piano when I was a kid. then and I did that till I was 13. When I was about 10 or 11 in grade school, you had the option to be in school band. And a friend of mine did it one year, and he got out of class for a half hour every week. And
Like,
I want to do that.
I'm there.
So I played clarinet for
Oh
about
my.
for a year in grade school and then 3 years in junior high school. I
Yeah, because they
hated,
didn't really have drum. The only thing you got to is when you got high school and you had the marching band and you could play, but that's not the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. So I wasn't a drum guy so much, but so I played clarinet, and because my mother knew, she had talent, she contacted the symphony clarinetist, and I started taking lessons with him. So over the summer after sixth grade, I had started in sixth grade. Over the summer, I took lessons from him, and he got my tone together and everything. So starting the seventh grade, I was first chair at the thing. I hated it because we're sitting in band, you're right up front, and the director's right there. All the way in the back, the drummers were
Drummers.
walking around, and they had a water fountain back there, and I thought, damn, I'd rather be back there. So I started, for somehow I got drums about when I was in ninth grade, 10th grade. I saved up some money and bought like the Japanese kind of drum set. And I was going to teach myself. And I played, I'm a right-handed guy, and I had seen guys holding the sticks, where they play
Yeah,
like
like
trumpet.
real, as they say, real drummers too.
Right,
Instead of the
exactly.
Ringo Starr, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So, to me, I thought, wow, I'm right-handed, and this is the hard way to hold the stick. I'm putting the hard way to hold the stick in my weak hand. What if I did this? So I did this for about a year. Same thing that kind of Lenny White and Billy Cobham did. It was like they played they're right-footed, but left-handed.
Right.
I did that for a year. I took lessons, started taking lessons, and my first teacher said, either, sort it out straight or do this. And as you said, either back then there wasn't anybody I saw that could play that would,
No, yeah.
that was playing matched. So I started going like that, and I saw guys like Buddy Rich, and that kind of thing. But the thing that really was attracting me was R&B stuff. So I had all the Aretha Franklin singles. I had, some Motown stuff. Also had some jazz stuff, some Coltrane stuff, and the Buddy Rich records. I used to play Big Swing Face. I used to put the record on and play along with it, lift the arm up so it just kept
Really?
going over and over and over and over.
I remember those days.
Yes.
But you know what's funny about you, though? I imagine that you were completely opposite of everybody else in school. They were probably listening to the Beatles or listening to the Stones, or it's something during the British or something, whatever it was. You're the guy, and they're like, "Who do you listen to?" Buddy Rich. I got some jazz here. You know who Coltrane is? Who? Is that a new band? You were probably completely outside the loop of what
Yeah.
everybody else is enjoying.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to the radio a lot, so I stayed on top of what was going on with pop music. But yeah, I didn't have any Beatles albums. I didn't have. To me, it was
That's
nice
funny.
music, but it didn't turn my crank. But
Right.
put James Brown on, or put on some of that other stuff, and all of a sudden, man, yeah,
Isn't that
there,
funny?
that's happening. Had
That's so
this
funny.
thing to it.
Well, and the thing about it too is so much of what we do, especially when we get to our age group,
Hmm.
you've already been influenced by lots of people. And
Yeah.
in return, you influence people because that's what you do. You've been playing with somebody famous or several people.
Yeah.
But, and then people start listening. Oh, I can hear a little. Like when people play, I interviewed a great guitarist out of San Francisco. He's a great slide player, and he was a Jeff Beck fan. Him and I are
Hmm.
both Jeff Beck fans. And I told him, I said, I didn't have to hear you were a Jeff Beck fan until I heard you start playing. And I could hear the influences immediately of
Hmm.
Jeff Beck. Now, I'm not a drummer, so a person like you can listen to somebody, oh, I can hear the influences of fill in the blank or whoever it is because you can tell by the way they do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it looked to me like when I was just, looking into your background and all that stuff, you got pretty, you were a talented person very early. And the other thing mentioning that, I mean, you're talking about playing piano and playing clarinet for so long. You actually got the ability, I would imagine, of reading music and how people write music. Even though it may have been classical, it's still, things like that.
Well,
That,
it was funny the piano stuff. I wasn't a great reader, but I understood it, and the concept of bringing the melody out, that kind of business. When I started playing drums, I loved that the most initially because I didn't have to read any music. I just listened and played along, and to
hmm
me that was really fun.
yeah.
Where and then in school they had jazz band, and there would be charts you would read in jazz band, but the charts that they give the drums are kind of funny, and it's probably a lot of them have too much information in them, and you have to kind of sort out what's going on. So the more I would kind of understand, because I'd listened to the stuff before I found recordings of it, so I knew what it was supposed to sound like. And then I was kind of reading and just seeing how various people would represent stuff. But I really wasn't forced into the reading thing until I started doing jingles. So my playing got to the point where, and I was networked enough in with the guys, because there was a significant jingle business here in Minneapolis in the 70s, because we have a fair amount of corporate
Yes, you do. Yeah.
entities.
Yeah.
So they would do music, some of their music locally. So um, going in to do a jingle thing now, all of a sudden, oh, okay, now you got to read, and you got to
Yeah.
play with the click,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the more I did that, the better my reading got. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a serious reader. I can do okay, in certain situations, but I haven't read for so long, I'd be very tentative of accepting any reading gig playing right now.
Well,
But
you
I
played
did
so long, you
anyhow.
don't have to. I mean, obviously they give you a piece of music, but when was you consider your break? I mean, I saw where you played with Roy Buchanan, but I think that was later on. I mean, writing the jingles is pretty cool because you get exposed to a lot of different types of
Oh yeah.
music. Because you never know, something could be sad, happy, could be
Yeah.
whatever, and
One day you got to be a country guy. Now you got to be a rock guy. Now you got to be a funk
so
guy. Now
you're
you got to
really
be
a
a jazz
studio
guy.
musician. Yeah, you're a studio musician.
Yeah, that's basically my background. And then,
And then when you get known as that, everybody wants to hire you.
yeah, you were on the you got up the list pretty quick. And then the fact, this is also in this era too, where people were starting to be siloed. Oh, these older jazz guys, and then the new rock guys,
Yeah.
and there were very few people that were going between the two, or that could go between the
Yeah,
two.
crossover.
So that was the other part. And to me, I wasn't driven to be a live performer. I was driven to create the sounds and off of the records and the feelings and that kind of stuff that I loved. That was, to me, that was where it was. It was this recording thing. So now here I am doing it with these guys, and having to do all this different stuff.
Well,
Uh,
and I could see with the different people that you played with. Obviously, you played with Steve Miller longer than anybody else, but your influences and all that give you an opportunity to be able. If you're a struggling musician, there's nothing better than I don't want to go. Of course, things have changed so much now than back then. You could actually get on a record and get royalties. That didn't happen
yeah,
anymore. But
yeah.
then, as a studio person, I mean, we all go back to listen to the Beach Boys and the Monkees, all those people that had all the same band,
Yep.
and the people in Muscle Shoals that did all this stuff. They just show up, and Paul Simon show up. Oh, here's the studio. I
Yeah.
think that gives you a bigger palette to choose from because you're exposed to so many different things, and then you become this person that's like it's kind of like it's kind of like acting to me.
Yeah. Amen.
You
Exactly.
get started as that, and they're like, oh, get Gordy, he can act like so and so.
right.
And then oh I'll get Gordy for that part. And then eventually Gordy is the person that they want because Gordy is Gordy.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. Well, there's an old joke, in there are four phases to a musician's career.
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Who's Gordy Knudtson? Get me Gordy Knudtson. Get me a young Gordy Knudtson. Who's Gordy
It's Gordy.
Knudtson?
I had a friend of mine years ago, acquaintance of mine was eventually passed away very young. He was in a TV show, and I asked him. I said, and he was a character actor, and he was the same way. I said, I know what's going to happen to you, and of course, unfortunately, it was taken from us too soon. But it was like, oh, get him because this is the way he acts. And I asked him that. I was sitting in a golf cart one. I said, you want it to be where they go, oh, I need you because you're, and then eventually it'll be the other way. Oh, he's not that. We've got too many of that.
Mm-hmm.
When did you? I've asked a lot of people this, and maybe you can't recall it, but where was, and you may remember this or not. When was the moment you're on stage with somebody and you're sitting there going, I can't believe I'm sitting here playing with fill in the blank? Did that happen to you at like a young age? Like when you're, I mean, who would it be? I mean, obviously you were pretty well established by the time you started playing with Steve Miller.
Yeah. And it was like, but getting the opportunity to get to the gigs required this kind of circuitous
Sure. Yeah.
route, In fact, the way I got the Steve Miller gig was, I used to hang out and I was doing, there was a great jazz band in town called Natural Life that played every Monday night, and it was the top great, this incredible guitar player Mike Elliott, and Billy Peterson was a bass player, Bobby Peterson piano player. Bobby played with Buddy Rich's band for a while. Saxophone player was named Bob Rockwell, and the first drummer was Bill Berg, who played with Flim and the BBs, one of the first
Okay.
Dragons. Really interesting, great drummer. And then another drummer came in, Eric Gravatt from McCoy Tyner's band came in.
Mm.
That was awesome. Anyway, I'd go down and hang out, and we'd every Monday night, because that was the thing. All the music, everybody was off. It was the night off.
Sure.
We were playing 5-6 nights a week, and we'd go down and hang in this. And I knew I was doing jingles with Billy Peterson. And one day, and I think it was like 1980 and 1981, about 10 a.m., my phone rings. He says, hey, Gordy, I'm in Chicago with Ben Sidran. Can you grab your drums and fly down here? We got to play the Quiet Night in Chicago, and we got to go to Milwaukee to do a gig, and Madison to do a gig, and then we finish up in Minneapolis. I said, sure. So
And Ben played with Steve, didn't he? Was he
Yeah.
on the first album or two albums? Yeah, I remember seeing his
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, so he was involved, but I had no idea of this.
Yeah.
So I go down, and Ben's a singer and kind of doing a jazz bebopper thing, and vocals and writing clever lyrics to old jazz standards, that kind of thing. And I did okay, was I God's gift to drums? No, but I did okay. And after the thing was over, I said, boy, if you ever need anybody, call me. So he started calling me. So Billy and I would go out and do this stuff. And it turns out, we find out that, he used to play with Steve Miller. So he decided to do a recording in town, we did on the live side. So it was us, and they flew Steve Miller, and I think Phil Woods came in and played. And Steve had a good time. The next year we're playing with Ben Sidran at Jazz Alley in Seattle. We got a 2-week gig. Every night we're playing 3 sets for 6 nights a week. The first week, Miller was there every night, sat in the audience and watched every set that we played.
Oh, wow.
The second week, it turns out he was leasing a studio about 6 blocks away from the club called K. Smith Studios. At this point, he had quit touring in, I think, 83. Abracadabra had come out and was #1 on AOR.
Oh, yeah.
But he wasn't selling tickets. So he decided he was going to make a jazz record to fulfill his last obligation for,
I remember this. I remember
yeah,
the album.
and this is the Born to Be Blue record.
Yeah.
So we recorded this and in 87, and in 88 he decides, you know what, let's put the record out. We flew out there, we're going to do a tour now. So we booked a 6-week tour in the fall of 88. Now he hadn't been out for probably 5 years, and we thought, he thought it was going to be theaters, because the last time he was out, he was barely booking any tickets. Well, in this time,
That's sad to me. I mean, as huge as that song was, I mean, every time you watched MTV, it was like every third song, it was Abracadabra.
yep,
That's amazing to me. Anyway, go ahead.
yep. So to be on the cautious side, because Steve is a very smart business guy. He doesn't do dumb business moves. And that's one thing you got to give. He runs the organization, is really well run. There are competent people in every position. So he booked it was a 6-week kind of theater tour. And
And where was this? What part of the country was it in?
all the US and Canada.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So we were really kind of hitting all over. In fact, I think we were down in Dallas at one point on that,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
tour. But in that time from 83 to 88, he hadn't been out. Two things happened. A, classic rock radio had started, and he was in heavy rotation. And B, his greatest hits CD had come out, and it was selling 1 million copies every year. But Billboard, and nobody in Billboard knew about it, because they never tracked, back then, they weren't tracking any catalog hits.
Yeah. Right.
So everything was instantly sold out. And we went to the theater gigs, and Steve thought we were going to play this adult slick jazz, or kind of what he called jazz. And we get out there, and it's all kids, and they want to hear the greatest hits. And
Oh, yeah.
there are some funny recordings I think he's got where we're playing, like he had one thing we did all blues, and then he sang the lyrics to C.C. Ryder over the top of it, right? I mean, it was cool. It was nice
Yeah.
stuff. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with it.
It's different. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're doing this, but all the kids, like, there was this one show, I think, in Seattle, and you can hear them. The kids are going, "Fuck you! Fuck you! Play the Joker! Fuck you!" Just going berserk. It was hilarious, man. And then, so the following year, we went out to, in fact, there was one show we did when we went down to Dallas on this tour. We were playing Dallas, and we played the convention center, which I had been down before,
Right.
playing the same place, believe it or not, with a band out of Minneapolis playing a sportsman show, playing behind Victor the Wrestling Bear. Yeah, I bet not too many people you talk to have that on.
I know that.
So we're doing the sound check and as a result of this stuff in this first tour, we're having to learn. We had some of the hits, but now
Right.
we got some of the other hits. So in Dallas, we had to learn Jungle Love that day. So at rehearsal, we're doing it, and it's
Yeah.
high. He hasn't moved the thing. The dude's an amazing singer.
Oh yeah. He's got a great. It's obviously not like it was, but he was a great. I mean, he was range, and he was smooth. He was smooth.
Even when I started working with him, I mean, as singers, you'd be playing something in a key, work with some singers,
Yeah.
take it down. You take it down a step,
Yeah.
or two,
Yeah.
or take it up a
Yeah.
step. It's a little low. Steve, we'd be playing some, and he'd say, "Let's try it," and he drove tritone away, and that's about
Wow.
as far away as you can get.
Yeah.
And it sounded good. It sounded good in both places where he sang it. It's truly amazing that way. So anyway, we're rehearsing that we're doing Jungle of, and there's some stuff that's really high, and it's kind of like at the edge of this stuff, and he just, we're doing it that night, and
Of course, the chorus is pretty high, if I remember right.
Oh,
yeah, it's up
dude.
there. Yeah.
It is,
Don't go love. Yeah, it's way up there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and he's we played it the first night, and the guitarist is out doing the little riff, Steve turns around and looks at me and goes, God, I hate singing this. It's so high. So I think he might have pulled it down a step or two.
Oh yeah,
Not
I would imagine.
not
Yeah,
a lot, but just a
yeah.
little, you know.
Well,
So
people
yeah,
don't
we
know
did
that. I
that.
mean, they don't know. And the
Yeah,
thing about it, when I was telling you about the video I saw, even as much as a fan I was and still am, you forget how many hits he had. I mean, all the songs and of course, you're probably wondering, how do I know Ben Cindron and all those people? I was a liner nut. I always read the album liners. No, I mean, I'd sit there and listen to my headphones and go, okay, he's playing guitar here and all that stuff. And
yeah,
who's the engineer on this? And all these famous people that I got to who they were. But then when you start listening to them and then you start playing, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, there's another one.
yeah,
Oh yeah, wait a minute. I mean, obviously you're going to stay the best stuff at the end,
yeah,
but some of the stuff that was big, like the Joker, I never was that best. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't a
yeah,
thing because wasn't that great. I loved the stuff like Living in the USA.
yeah.
And the fact that he still puts on Somebody Give Me a Cheeseburger at the end, which just cracked me up because it's like, how many people know that? It'd be like Paul McCartney coming on, I buried Paul at the end of Strawberry Fields,
Yeah.
his version of it.
Well,
But then
like
you
what?
sit there and of course they edit these things, but did he just kind of, when he played, did he just go from one song to the next? Was there many breaks?
Well, we know we just went. We went. We had stuff fairly tight. I mean,
That's what I thought.
he's 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 very conscious of the show, you know, and we were always trying to keep things moving along. You know, we didn't want it to get to a lull unless he was gonna talk and whatever for a bit, little, you know,
Yeah.
bond with the audience is different. That's a different shtick. But most of the time we were, you know, it was like, let's keep things rolling, you know, keep things
Well,
rolling.
so over the 30 years that you performed with him, I noticed that, and you look at now, of course, the algorithm is starting to find, here's the 87 version of Steve Miller, or 1982, and all that stuff. You seem to be the constant where a lot of the other people were not.
I was,
Was it because they just, and I know how bands are, I've been in enough of my life to know, sometimes people just like changing up, they don't want to play with them anymore or whatever. But you were kind of the guy that was there all the time.
I was from 87 on, I was the guy basically on the drum chair. The bass player on the Austin City Limits thing, you're correct, there wasn't bass player, but the guitar player actually is a bass player too, and he's a good bass player. So there was a couple tunes that he played bass on, and there was probably more tunes that Joseph played left hand
Yeah.
keyboard bass on, where
Which
Steve
is
went.
really, I was impressed by that.
I'm telling you, Joseph
That
is,
guy was unbelievable. I mean, I'm
he's,
sitting there going, because I'm watching as a musician, I'm going, like, where's the bass? Where's the bass? And then I see it. Dum,
yeah,
dum, 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 dum. I'm going, oh, and he's over here. And I'm going like, and he never looks over here.
yeah, yeah. No,
And I'm going,
there was some rehearsals like Steve liked to change, you know, keys to stuff to try sing it in different stuff, and
yeah.
so there were moments where we're playing stuff in different keys, trying it, and Joseph is singing the harmony part, playing the keyboard part, playing the bass part all at the same time, and he could do it in any key, man. It was like, just, you know, that dude, he's very. I really enjoyed working with him. I felt like
How long was you with the tour?
he came in the early '90s, and he's still doing it. You know,
What's his last name?
Wooten. He's one of the Wooten
Oh,
brothers.
worthy is he?
Yeah, yeah. Joseph Wooten.
Is he related? He's a Victor's brother or cousin or something
Victor's
like that?
older brother. Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, he's kind of. I think he's the middle guy of the five brothers. Rudy had passed away, but it's oh God Almighty, Gordy. Uh, it's terrible. Can't remember the guy's name. But Future Man is the next guy. I
Oh,
think that's
you're talking
Roy,
about the,
Roy, and then Reggie.
oh,
Reggie's the
okay.
oldest. Roy's the drummer. He's the second oldest. Joseph is there. Rudy was the saxophone player. He's passed away, unfortunately, and Victor was the youngest. You know,
So
his
we're along the line that I'm really intrigued by the fact that you came along and said, I need some headphones or something special for drummers.
Um,
When did that all take place?
well, this is kind of because part of it's because my background. My nobody was in the music business in my family, so I was seeing what was available within the music business, and then seeing some other people I knew and respected doing some side kind of stuff. For example, my teacher Marvin Dahlgren had a drum shop that he ran. He was the principal percussionist of the Minnesota Orchestra. He taught at the University of Minnesota, and he also had a drum shop going on
Mm.
where he sold drums. Um, Another friend, acquaintance of mine named Gary Gauger. Remember the rims, drums mounts? There was a suspension thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gary invented this, and he lives about 2, 3 miles from me, and he started doing that. And so I saw that this, having like a side gig could be a cool thing. And I happened, from my own experience, like in the late 80s and early 90s, I started noticing, I'm right-handed, so when I would talk on the phone, I'd always put my phone up to here. And as I was getting older, I was kind of started sounding like this, like that. And I put it over here, and I could hear everything everybody was saying, but
Yeah, yeah,
so I thought,
yeah.
wow. And the other piece of this was because I was doing so much studio work, this is before we had individual mixes. So we'd go in and cut a rhythm basic, and you've got four guys on the same mix. Now, when I first started, you could find still some Koss Pro 4A headphones. The
Hmm.
drums are loud, and I'm in a little
Oh
booth.
yeah, yeah, they're
So,
loud.
yeah, those worked kind of okay. But then these other headphones, they thought people were getting two heart attacks. So let's let the sound in so you could yell behind someone with headphones, and then you won't scare them when you come up and touch them. Well, that's great for that. But for me, all the drums are coming in. So now I got to crank the headphone level even more,
Yeah.
cutting with a click, and it's pounding everybody's thing, and it's screwing up my hearing too.
Wow.
So I had it was about 94, I think we got done with it. Finished a tour out in on the West Coast, and I saw a friend of mine who used to live here working in a music store, worked out there. I had a day off, we hung out. I went over to his place, and he showed me these headphones, and it was like these massive hearing protection things. And he says, "Yeah, I got one set of Walkman speakers on this one, and I got another set of Walkman speakers here. I put the music in here, and I put the click in here, and I put it on this. Oh, yeah, okay, that's kind of different."
Yeah.
So about a week later, I'm coming home now after being gone for about 2, 3 months. I'm going through my stack of mail, and here's this little catalog looking through, and here's a picture of a guy pushing a lawnmower wearing some things with a cord coming out. It says, "Hey, listen to the sound of music when you mow your lawn." And I
Right.
thought, God, I wonder if that's the same thing that my friend has got. So I bought it, came, and sure enough, it was kind of like a crappy version of the lo-fi, but
Right.
it did block sound, and you could listen to music with it.
Right.
There was an 800 number on the bottom. So I called the 800 number. Turns out it was two brothers who lived in Minneapolis, where I am, who had
Oh wow.
started this side little business to do this thing. And so then after talking to them for a while and negotiating, they had one other, third brother who was an attorney, which turned out to be kind of a pain in the ass initially.
He's an attorney. That's all you have
Yeah,
to say.
enough said.
Enough said.
Yes. So we finally negotiated, and I just said, I've got a market for thing, but you got to give me the music. You give me this portion of the market. So I trademarked a thing called drum phones, and in 1995, I started selling these drum phones. I added some accessories to the thing,
Were they
and
manufacturing them there?
they manufactured in Minneapolis. Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Was this really for more, I know you could use it for both, but it was more for studio Because a lot of guys play live, they don't want headphones on. There's
Correct.
unless they're listening to a click or something like that.
Yeah, it just depends. It just
Yeah.
depends. Really, all it was I knew that my hearing was bad, and I knew that my friend started this thing, and I found this thing, and turns out that the hearing thing was kind of becoming a thing in drum world. And I sent the product off to be reviewed to Modern Drummer magazine, and they loved it because they were starting to do this. So I got reviewed in there, and that first year I didn't. There was before the web. This is before the internet.
Right.
I had an 800 number and a Visa machine, and just getting the Visa machine had to. The bankers were going, "What? What do you want this for?"
Yeah, yeah. And back then, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. So that was a kind of an ordeal. But then we got that. But people would call in a 800 number, and man, I sold 1,000 pair that first year.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it was, I guess, wow, I found this market. And then I had some guys, pro level guys, because the sound it was inexpensive stuff, so it was kind of cheap and
Yeah.
cheesy. It did protect your hearing.
Right, but yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but then I had some guys, man, if you could put some real speakers in there, man, you'd have something. So I went back to the brothers, and I said, took the phones we were using, and I brought in some Sony, it was the home version of the 7506s. If you could put this in here, we really got something. So it took them 5 tries before they got the thing sorted out, and there was a low end and it sounded good. We called those super phones, and those were $180. I did the same marketing shtick I did. I didn't get reviewed, but I did the same ad, which was I had a sketch of the things. The original drum phones was just a sketch. So we did a sketch of this at $180. Barely sold anything. And I went, what was going on? I talked to a marketing guy, and he said, it's not real. I said, what do you mean it's not real? It's a drawing. How do I know that those headphones are real?
I got you.
Oh, so I take a picture, so we took a picture, and we sold a few more of those. But then the saxophone player that was working with Steve Miller, Bob Malik, had a friend of his, Lawrence Feldman, a reed player in New York City, who was very, very, very concerned about his hearing. So he had bought some superphones, and he said they're okay, but if you could take these, and then he sent me this muff that we're currently using for the ultraphones. He said if you could put the speakers in that, and we did. And then I went, oh my God, this is the bomb. This is the bomb. The superphones would sit, when you put those on your head, they would sit on your ear cartilage. And I did some work out of Steve Miller's where we had them on for like 2-3 days. My ears were so sore from the resting on the cartilage, I couldn't wear them after the 4th day. The ultraphones went around the ear,
Sure.
and it was more isolation, and it sounded good. And it was like, oh my God. So then I knew I had the bomb, and I just kind of kept selling it. And it was nice. The business was small enough that my wife could run it when I was out of town on the road. And I just kept doing it. There was a couple moments where I kind of got, do we really need to do this? But knock wood, thank God I kept doing this. I sold during that 20-year, we started those in like 2000 or 1999, and up to about 2019, a couple hundred pair a year, Pandemic comes, all of a sudden, now
Everybody wants them.
Everybody wants them.
Yeah.
And now we're selling, last year I think I did 600 pair. So
Wow.
it's
Are they
nice.
still made there?
Yeah, and it gets even, the synchronicity of what happened here is mind-boggling. So to continue the story, we had the brothers create the ultraphones. I used to live in the center of the city, and then my wife and I decided to move out to the burbs, and we came out here to Minnetonka, so we're in a little cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
The two brothers had a guy that actually built the headphones. He was a contractor, does all these high-end houses, and he thought it was really fun doing this electronic stuff and for the,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so turns out that that dude, if I go out on my deck, I can see his house in the next cul-de-sac. So I've struck a relationship with him, and eventually, I once Steve's gig went away, I really needed to turn this into a real thing. So I bought out the two brothers. I bought all their inventory and bought them out, and just have the guy to run it. So they're made on the next cul-de-sac. I just drop the stuff off and I pick it up when it's finished. And it's a nice little business. He loves it because he's dealing with all these, let's call them difficult high-end clients all the time, that want, I want this, and I want this. So this is all
Oh
fun
yeah,
for
I
him.
understand. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he gets a kick out of the fact that all these stars wearing it.
I think what's funny to
So
me, or
it's
not
been
funny,
good.
interesting to me, that is a great American built story. Because I figured what would happen in the real world, what happens is you start making them and you're selling thousands of them, and then you go, let's call a Chinese guy
Yeah.
we can
And
make them half the price and we make twice
yeah,
as much money. I never thought about it, like you said, when you're in a booth, the drums are loud.
oh, dude, I'm telling you, I can't record without these headphones anymore. And then, I think the key piece of why I've been able to survive and, still be in business. First, the thing works, it
Yeah.
works better, and it beats the competition. And once my initial one, the drum phones came out, and other companies saw that, then I had people chasing me.
Oh,
And
sure.
then I was kind of presented with this thing, well, okay, do I really care about the mass market, like doing this low end kind of thing for things, or should I just focus in on the pro market? And then I decided let's just do the pro market, because then I can literally buy 7506s directly from Sony and these Peltor muffs and take these two off the shelf products,
Yeah.
slam it together.
Yeah.
And as long as I don't call it a Sony or a Peltor, I'm good. And it
Yeah.
costs more than the two individual pieces cost by themselves. I'm legal. And I think that because I'm using the industry standard headphone, whereas many people have went, well, what's the thing about those? Well, they're 41 millimeter or 43 millimeter. So the Chinese people, there's been a bunch of
I
companies
know.
trying to do it,
Yeah.
but it's not. I'm selling the thing that the musicians know. I've been in the studio. I see these 7506s, so it's the same thing I'm using, just wrapped in a thing. And I think that aspect of it, and the fact that the market is really a niche, that they're that I don't have big corporations at my heels. They're not going to get
You're
sued.
not big enough for them.
Yes,
You're not
and the
big enough
market
for them.
isn't big enough for them, but it's big enough for me to keep busy, and I make make some money.